what was and what wasn't a Blogject. And in some places it works better than others, but what I think worked best is that we created like analogies as a way to distinguish these things. So Blogjects sort of course, were like blogs, and objects were more like home pages. Remember home pages, like around 1995? Those horrible, horrible things that people did in really bad HTML that were very static. They just had, you had to know the URL in order to find it. There was no other dissemination network by which you could sort of find out what this person was about. You know, I don't even think search engines were really sort of up to par in terms of like just seeking things out. Do you want to describe some of the other aspects of this?
Yeah, an object which can give some data, and a Blogject would,
It's just, I mean, however smart it might be, if it's just back and forth once, like there needs to be a dialogue that keeps going and going, and that you get somehow value from it. It's not just a one-way thing, because the example of the IBO being that there's a difference between posting up something, somebody comments on it, and maybe you don't answer, but you kind of accept that as being like, well, he's too busy, as opposed to, well, the IBO can't answer because he just doesn't understand. So that subtle difference, I think we were concerned about.
Right, between like just the stunt, faux Blogject that's trying to come across as something that's an object that's blogging, and the one that's really able to circulate semantic meaning and sort of create a network of exchange or an economy of like a sharing of ideas or sharing of dialogue. Was one of the one of the points that made it sort of distinctive. My remembering about this this peculiar camera that had a sort of life of its own and produced a very sort of stirring image. Left this an image that was the camera was once owned by this couple that was caught in the tsunami. And you guys might know the story about this camera that was found after the tsunami. Its memory was still intact, and so they sort of pulled the images out of it. And there were about 3 or 4 frames of the approaching tsunami, and even an image of the woman side of the couple. The couple died, and when the wave came over. So like there was this moment, like several minutes before the tsunami hit, where they took a few pictures, and the camera survived. So we had this sort of idea of that camera as an autonomous kind of Blogject. It's able to disseminate. It has a history. It has some agency in the way in which it sort of enrolled a larger social network into questioning, what the sort of salience of this image and its meaning and the sort of richness. So we thought like, okay, so what would be, not this tragic camera, but what would be a camera Blogject?
Okay.
You can start.
Do you want to do that?
Go ahead.
You do this one, I'll do others.
All right. So this is a day in the life of my camera, Betty the camera. Maybe you get this camera, and this camera already has its own Flickr account, which is already opened since it was produced. So from inside the packaging, waiting for somebody to buy it, has been kind of registering this content. And so it comes with a Flickr account, has a GPS, has context awareness, and can Google, perhaps.
So the camera is, this is like in the world of Blogjects, I think we're sort of post-GPS, so no one really cares about latitude and longitude. They care about things that are around places that people go, or they care about things that are nearby things. So the camera is able to, obviously, just like other social beings, communicate with other Blogjects. So when it's in a particular environment, it can develop a sense of its context by communicating with these other objects. So the scenario that we sort of devised was the camera is with its owner when it's going to a birthday party. And so at the birthday party, there are other cameras there naturally. There might even be someone's watch. There's a table, and these things are able to essentially communicate and establish a context in which this activity is happening. So, for instance, this camera is able to communicate with the other cameras and find out, oh, you have a Flickr stream too? That's cool. And so they sort of link up their Flickr stream so they're able to share images, and they might even find out that this is a relevant enough context to actually set up a Flickr set for this particular event and tag their things in such a way that they're able to create that kind of linkage that makes social networks like Flickr really productive.
So maybe there's also the idea that from this awareness of these other devices, it pulls content kind of Googles where it's at. If it's at a restaurant, oh, what's that restaurant? I went to that restaurant the other day. Here are a few images, and kind of pulls content out and can also link to other content.
Yeah, so we were trying to think of the way in which, the great thing about blogging is that it's not just about putting up some content and then stepping away from it. It's really about circulating ideas and meaning and sort of establishing this very rich network of exchange. And so, we're trying to think of ways in which Betty the camera would do that. So it would, be doing all these things, finding other relevant content by, through all the ways in which that already work, but also going out and, finding content perhaps from feeds that are unrelated to cameras. So if you happen to be at a particular locale, it might also find newspaper articles that are related to that locale and establish links there. So it's really creating a very rich and vibrant, almost like a forest of semantically related linkages that provide increase the depth of meaning that a single image could have in this setting.
And it's also the idea that perhaps you've been to that place, but you didn't, consciously take images, but your camera's been taking images, and, having its own blog and kind of Googling that place and, oh, I went to this restaurant the other day, let me check my camera's blog. And so you can find content through that, in that kind of space where you as a user are perhaps unaware of what your camera's up to. You can kind of get updated information from it.
There were, of course, a few holes in the system. But this kind of signified the podium in the restaurant, which would anchor, this event at that place, and then each of these cameras, of course, would become, were their own Blogjects. So this would act as the, geographic or the contextual anchor, would be at the hostess station. So this kind of presupposes that there are Blogjects all over, and that some RFID-like thing, kind of connects them.
I think, this may be like the one-celled organism version of the Blogject, so it's just like very prototypical. It's just like a couple touch points. I think it's the kind of thing that probably any number of people in this room should like sort of prototype.
Yes, yes.
And,
but when you say there is a GPS with a camera, with an history, with a log and stuff, for me it's the new Mac. It's the Mac with the camera in it. It's a computer. It's not even a camera. So it's I'm the devil advocate, but it's in all the UV stuff. It's about the evolution of the computer or of the object. Maybe an object is not a computer, even if there is miniaturization. Maybe a Blogject could be just one functionality, one very dedicated, simple functionality, and not the whole, knife, Swiss knife, army knife, with all the functionality. So maybe the Blogject could be interesting if we keep on something very simple with just one function. I don't know, it's just an idea.
I think it's also talking about what convergence of technology can do, because if you have, all this stuff and all these functions that serve no purpose, or you will use on a very, very limited set, then what's the point, obviously,